Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council, navigating the human experience together.
Hafaday, Dero, and welcome to Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry, and today we are chatting with the family of Herman's Modern Bakery. We have two of the children of the founders of the business here to share with us more about their extraordinary parents. It's my pleasure to welcome Jesus T. Deleon Guerrero and his brother Herman. Buenas.
Buenas.
Señor, welcome, Hafaday, and thank you for coming to share with us about your family today. There's 12 of you all together. We couldn't fit everybody. So thank you for agreeing to come and share something about not just your bakery, but also your parents. Uncle Jess, maybe you could start us off since you're the second oldest out of all of the 12. What do you remember about how the bakery started and what it was like?
It started with remembering from constantly asking my father how did he start the Herman's Bakery. And if I recall, he mentioned that during those times after, maybe the war in 1944, when they put all the Chamorros in stockade or
internment camp.
And those time, a lot of the Chamorro I used to eat, sokopang, which is a loaf of bread. And somehow one of the Chamorros, Mr. Sablan, Akilili, remember that my father learned how to make a loaf of bread from one of the bakery back in Japanese time, Isamada Bakery, as a apprentice. And at the same time, the two brothers, the oldest one is Juan. The second youngest one is Jose. So when Mr. Sablan mentioned to the military that the Chamorro likes to eat bread, they called my father to start making bread, and that's when he started his first bread, pan 5 sen, the sweet bread.
Pan 5 sen.
Pan 5 sen.
5-cent bread.
Yeah. At that time, it wasn't pan 6 sen. Later on, it was named after that for the Chamorro when my father was moved out from the stockade.
Was he making bread inside the internment camp?
Yes,
wow.
They use it. I mean, they mix the bread manually.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't any machine. And they do it in the kitchen of where they prepare food for the local. And from there, they also build their own brick oven.
Hot nun ledrizu.
Yeah, hot nun ledrizu, right. Between the three of them. And that's how they used to bake the bread. And when the time passed by, when they start moving out the Chamorro to the Talankanoa resettlement, where they put out the local. My father was given equipment and some ingredient to start his own bakery as a business.
And that was someplace where the post office is now in Chalancanoa, correct?
Yeah, beside the post office, on the back of Matsumoto Theater.
At that time. Yeah. What do you guys remember back in those days, children helped the family business. What, Uncle June, what do you remember about working in the bakery?
Unfortunately, I was a sickly child growing up, so I have to defer to my older brothers, Jesus, and you have si Juan, si Bobby, and eventually, Joseph and Lee and Rudy are the one that actually work at the bakery.
So was it unfortunate or fortunate that you were?
Well, no, I couldn't because I always had a bad case of tonsillitis, and whenever I get tired, it inflamed, and then they will take me to the dispensary to get penicillin shots because I couldn't take anything pills unless they force it down my throat. No. So penicillin, and back then the nurses and even the Dr. Torres, I mean, they're not they're just very formal, so they just put down your pants and just stab you in your rear end, and they said, oh, after a while they don't give you any warning. And neither were the old nurses that used to work as nurses during the Japanese time, and even Dr. Torres was a doctor during the Japanese time.
So you got out of working at the bakery, so the more responsibility for you, Uncle Jess. What was that like?
It's for me, when I was growing up, I always followed my father. So majority of my time is wherever he goes to get lumber to heat up the brick oven, I'm always there also. So when we come back and, do all those things, I was helping only on the little side, not as a regular baker, because I was only, very small, 6 years old. And wherever my father goes, I want to follow too.
What was it like being the son of the baker, the sons of the baker in the community? Because everybody, I'm sure, wanted to eat bread every day. Then you were the kids. What did that feel like, and what did you see? How did the community interact with your parents at the bakery?
Well, there's a lot of people that sometimes the older ones, they remember growing up that at a certain time of the day, especially in the afternoon when the bread is freshly made, people will smell the bread all over town. And not only that, but then they send their kids to get bread, and sometimes by the time the bread gets to the house, it's holler out. So only the crust is left for the family.
Because the kid ate the soft part.
They take it out because it's so fresh and soft that they eat it. But kids are kids.
Yeah.
But it's the community. It's always been there. They buy their products, and we're very grateful that the military allow our parents to, or especially my dad, to set up, because they provide, like my brother Jesus mentioned, the equipments and the ingredients for a long time.
Wow.
Until much later, then they say, perhaps they sort of urgent, and perhaps it might be a good time to to start charging, and that's when the pan 5 cent start
very popular.
Became popular.
Very popular.
So your family name, nickname is Pan, which means bread. Yeah. How did you feel as children when people called you Familian Pan? Did you feel proud?
Better known.
Better known.
Your family is better known as Pan. Like any other family here, there's also on the side that, better known as that family. Common, very common.
It's the distinguished family from one another, because if you say Herman, and which kind of unusual also, because why would they name my father Herman? during the Japanese time. But thinking about it, if you look at the German period, I think there is a Herman, and so I figured that my grandfather named my dad Herman after that person, during the German period. So Herman is not a common name until after my dad's. I think he was the oldest Herman, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
Anybody else? Because our nephew also, our cousin Sir Herman Q, better known as Eru, was named Herman. Mm-hmm. So it becomes a little bit popular, but it's not a common name.
That's true.
But I was named after my dad because Jesus was born very close to Christmas.
Has to be named Jesus.
So I think they were expecting that he was going to be born on Christmas, but it was right after Christmas, so they couldn't name him Herman. So the next boy has to be named Herman. So I was named after my dad.
Okay. Was there a time when things ever went wrong at the bakery? What are some of the things that?
Well, first is supplies. We couldn't get supply if it's typhoon, and just like the grocery in Saipan, if rice run out, everybody's panic.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we going to get rice? How are you going to get rice when the water is very rough up there and the ship cannot even come?
So what would happen with the bakery and the community?
Well, more or less, we just, run it on a day-to-day basis. If somebody wants to roast a pig, that's part of the business, roasting pig. The breadfruit, we also make that in the oven to make it dry and, good for coffee.
We call it esuk.
Esuk.
Yeah, and it's they dry the breadfruit, and you can keep it in a container for a long period of time. And that's a practice also goes back to not just the Japanese, but I think going back even to the Spanish time, preservations of food. But you can also, the dry, you can put it in the pot and cook it with coconut milk so it becomes soft, like lemai,
like fresh breadfruit
yes,
instead of
yes.
dry. You mentioned that, especially with so many of you kids, your father had a huge stock of rice.
Yeah. He grew rice at one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't realize he grew it.
Yeah, he grew it.
Where did he grow it? What part of the island?
Not far from, right below Herman's Bakery.
Today?
No, this is way back.
Or in Chalancanoa?
No, it's in right below Herman's Bakery, presently now.
Oh, okay.
It's on the bottom.
Near the airport.
Yeah, it's a very wet land actually, if it rains. And somehow, I don't know who told my dad that, you can grow rice. But I believe that during the Japanese time, some of the Okinawan, I heard that they also raising rice. So my dad did that portion, but after he harvests, he put it in a drum for if the time is hard. So
A 55
55
gallon
drum.
You
yeah.
oil
dry
drum.
it first.
This is the
Dry
long
it.
grain rice.
Okay.
So, it would stay there for a long time. And at one point, the ship couldn't come because of the typhoon. And we end up surviving on, on that rice.
Not bread, but rice.
Rice, yeah.
Wow. When I want to take a break, but when we come back, let's talk about your mom a little bit too.
Okay.
Okay? We'll be back after this break.
Looking for resources about Marianas history, culture, and more? Well, check out the Northern Marianas Humanities Council's collection. Our extensive video, audio, and photographic library can be found on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at 670 Humanities. or check out the written resources on our website at nmhcouncil.org. And for those who prefer a good book, we also have a selection of local publications for purchase. So, dive in, explore, and share your comments as we navigate the human experience together.
Welcome back. I heard some stories when we were chatting at the bakery about your mom. The cafe at the current Herman's Modern Bakery is named after her, Tan Marita, and I thought it would be nice for people to know her a little bit more. I think I was reading in your 80th anniversary booklet that she was kind of like the backbone of the family and the business. What can you tell us about Tan Marakita?
Well, she's a very kind woman. I think she knows, because growing up during the Japanese time, her parents passed away in the 30s, and so she ended up also having responsibilities of taking care of her siblings, because she did have an older sister, but she also passed away, and so women tends to be more the motherly type, so she takes care of everybody new, just what she learns from her mom growing up, and perhaps other relatives and uncles, but she's always a very generous individual. She's always very kind. She always look at the positive side of people, and despite, there's one thing about my mom: don't criticize her siblings because you're gonna get into a fight. Don't touch. It's a taboo for us even to mention, because she's very defensive. She takes and protective, but she's always generous in a lot of ways. That I remember growing up that in Chalancanoa, that we used to live close to the Lali 4, District 4, and so there's always our Carolinian neighbors on the other side always bringing fish to sell, in a plate, and we'll sell it to my mom, and my mom will buy it, and then they will go back and fill up the plate again when they come back and sell it to my mom, and my mom will buy it
again
and again, and she would do it, and eventually she will share it, whatever she has, also not just with us, whatever we have, but shares it with her siblings and neighbors. Not only that, but she's not the type just to sit down. She's constantly moving. And at the time also we have a store, one of the earliest store perhaps, right after the war. And she used to make things, and she does all those things. But
what did she make?
She likes to make what they call conserva is basically, the green papaya, and you cut it into big pieces, and and you cook it with sugar. But there's a process to do it that I'm not sure the younger generation knows how to do it, because I remember that she would soak it in the what do you call afuk? You know what afuk means?
Lime.
Yeah. They soak it, and it for some reason it hardened it.
Oh, okay.
So it's easier to make it crispy. Wow. And it's also a process that they use when they have fresh corn, and to make titillas, iskomi, they soak those things in lime.
So that you can grind it to
Once
make
you
flour
dry it,
for
and it's
tortillas.
easier to grind it.
Wow, we are
once you
learning a
grind it.
trade secret here.
But those kind of things, it's because even my sisters, you know, I'm not sure that, but I remember growing up that I sometimes I have to clean those things.
She even have a stone. It's like a wobble like this, and
Yeah.
then you do like this on the coin
yeah.
to make the tortillas. So those are things that you couldn't find anywhere. I don't know where did she ever end up with that stone.
Were there other people in the village that you remember doing this, or?
I'm sure that, you know, there's people that have done it because they also learn, and you know, the tamales. I remember this lady that is well known for her tamales gisu, but they're big like this.
Like that big?
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
the biggest tamales gisu I've ever
No, now it's just like
Yeah,
this
now
one,
it's
but
like a
back then,
taste.
but it's covered in banana leaves.
Okay.
And she will bring a bucket of tamales gisu to the house, and my mom will buy all of it.
Wow.
Of course, when you have 10 kids to feed,
Also the coin, huh?
11
They make
kids.
tamales with coin.
so it's plentiful between the fish, and my mom is always
sweet potato. You were
sweet potato. My mom also will, you know, with breadfruit, the lemai, when it's ripened, she will take it and have it
Big.
baked it, but to the point that it's you know, you can leave it for several days or a week. And I remember her, she used to make a lot of those things, and I used to sit down and just eat it because it's sweet and it's good.
Yeah.
But I think back then, you know, there's a lot of people with farms, so whatever they grow, you share and or exchange it. And I know that even the stores that we used to have back then, after the war, there's not many businesses, so trying to get income is very insignificant because basically the military is the only one that is providing jobs. So the businesses is basically run on credit. But you know, those credits, after the business basically closed up, my mom basically also closed up the credits.
The credit account.
I mean, but it's basically she just said, don't bother anybody else. Don't bother the people. Don't try to collect. That's it.
Leave it alone.
Leave it alone because they have families. You don't want to hurt them, and they need to think about providing for their family. So they basically wrote it off. I mean, and basically that's my mom's attitude, that they're struggling and don't make it very difficult for them because they have to provide. And even during those time, you know, my dad also, we used to have a lot of Carolinians workers also, and my dad's business, the Trocus, collecting, they call it a liling, and so they go and collect those things and they bring it in. So if you have one of those hook, you can come and remove the meat inside the liling or the Trocus and take it fix it for your meal for your family, and then they buried that, and then a month later they dig it up. And because they buried it by the ocean, so they dig it up, and people will say, okay, you can come and help clean, and whatever it's clean, and you put it in the bag, they weigh it, and you get paid for it.
Because your dad was not just a baker; he was really an entrepreneur, from what you're telling. So this was to get the shells to send to Japan for making buttons. And he was paying people who wanted to work.
Also, right.
And
Copra also.
wow.
You also buy the brass.
Ah, yes,
Yeah,
from
you
the
know,
unexploded ordnance.
Right.
Yeah.
And those
I heard
are
about that.
also things that you ship it to Japan.
And he also had one of, if not the first, hotels and a movie theater here on Saipan.
You know, when the military was just getting ready to be transferred, or the military government is being transferred to the Department of Interior, by the hospital there used to be barracks and bachelor's quarters. And so my dad was, I don't know, for some reason he ended up using it, the barracks and the bachelor's quarters, as a hotel. And because there was really no hotel on island at the time, and there was a restaurant and a bar just up
This
a
was
little
like
bit.
60s, right? I think
Yeah, either late 50s, early 60s.
Now that I'm thinking about it, the Japanese probably had a hotel, but this was the first one after the war.
This is after the war.
Yeah.
And so they
After the military
Yeah,
move out.
yeah.
So that's, you know, there's nothing was being built. So Hafade was not built yet, and neither was Royo Taga wasn't built anything. So there was hardly anything where people could stay. And basically, you know, my dad, because he spoke Japanese, a lot of it's even during that time, no, I think before the interior finally took over, the Japanese that come over here, anybody that comes to the island, you need to get security clearance by the military, because you cannot just come to Saipan. It wasn't like going to other Micronesian islands or, you know, or Guam, but you need security clearance. So those things were necessary in place back then. Of course, the naval administrations, you know, they're different why they were here, but you know, they kept the island for security purposes, and it's basically the only place Saipan was considered, and that's why during the trust territory time, the trust territory is considered under the U.S. jurisdiction, under the United States. But in the early days, Saipan was run by the U.S. Department of the Navy, not the Department of Interior. The turnover was not until in the early 60s. No.
Well, it's really been an extraordinary story of your family, starting with the bakery in the internment camp, which I didn't even realize, to today, and continuing the legacy of your parents for not just baking, but being entrepreneurs, being givers and generous in the community. Is there anything else you would want people to know about your parents? And
You know, the little oven that was the brick oven, when they were clearing that area by the gym,
Yes.
Susupi,
It was still
it
there.
was still there, and I thought that perhaps historic preservation will save that, but it was demolished because it was at the corner at the end.
That wasn't up and used by your
Yes,
parents?
and
Yeah.
I was
That was,
surprised
first
that
oven.
because it was a brick oven,
Yeah.
and I think that was the one they used in the corner, so it doesn't affect the people on the other side. But it was unfortunate that the government decided to just demolish it, and I don't know what HPO, why they allows the government to do that, but they should have figured out the history first before they took it down.
It would have been a good reminder of
But even the
how we did it in the old days.
But even in Chalancanoa, the oven was the first we used was not electric. It was also brick inside the bakery.
Electric start coming in late 50s, 51.
I wonder if bread tastes different if you cook it in a hot noon versus in an electric oven.
Sweet bread used to be cooked baked in the oven.
It's better.
It tastes
better?
better.
How is it better?
It's
You have to try.
the crispiness of the skin.
The
it's
crust.
different.
Whoa. Okay, this is our next project.
Just like just like the French bread.
Yeah.
That French
Yes.
bread you cannot cook on a regular oven.
Mm.
You can cook, but it's the texture is totally different than a French oven.
It's like when you go somewhere and you do try pizza that is baked in that kind of oven
Yeah.
rather than an electric. It's very different. It tastes very different.
got you. I get what you're saying.
But they used to have that brick, and I don't know what happened to the brick after we move up. They moved the bakery up there. They disassembled and people.
It was Wampan's time
Mm.
when they start breaking the thing down. When they start moving to the present Herman's Bakery.
Mm.
At that time, it was Herman's incorporated. Once it was moved to the present location, it becomes a corporation. It was changed totally.
So basically, my dad was the starter, and then I think Wampan, and then Jesus, and then Wampan again, no? After him.
No, it was Wampan, and then he ran for senator.
And then you took over,
When he ran for senator, I
You
stepped
took
in.
Mm.
and then he came back.
And then I got out in the 92, and then Wampan took it over again. So it's a lot of hard work.
Hopefully, we'll have another 80 years of Herman's Bakery, more to come.
I hope
I
I, can
hope
look
so.
from heaven. I hope I can look from the
Familian
from
bond
heaven.
will rise like yeast and continue to benefit our community.
Yeah.
Thank you both for sharing today. Really appreciate your time and sharing stories and giving us the opportunity to get to know your parents a little bit more.
But not only that, but most of our siblings, they in one way capacity, because even Annie became a general manager of the bakery. My sister also, they all work for the bakeries at one point in time, and all my siblings basically,
Basically,
all of us. We're hoping that the next generation will step in and
And they are.
and we can retire and just stay out of it. Let them run it for the next, like you say, for the next 80 years.
Thank you,
Thank
Sister
you.
Masi. Dankaluna, Sister Masi.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
us.
very much.
Our guests today have been Jesus and Herman T. Deleon Guerrero, sharing about their parents, the founders of Herman's Modern Bakery, the longest existing bakery here in the Marianas. This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
Your Humanities Half Hour has been made possible in part by a major grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Democracy demands wisdom. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities. For more information or to share your thoughts, contact the Northern Marianas Humanities Council at nmhcouncil.org or on social media at 670 Humanities. That's 670 Humanities.